What is up, guys? In today's video, I'm going to be going over several tips to hopefully help you aim better with the rifles in Fortnite Chapter 6 Season 3. As always, if you guys do enjoy this video, find it helpful, informative, or interesting, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you like to see more, and comment down below what ranged weapon is your favorite this season. Mine is definitely going to be the Spire AR. If you guys would like to use my code in the item shop, it is EvolveJake, just like my channel name is. And one major difference between Chapter 6 Season 3 and most of the recent seasons we've had over the past few years is going to be that there is no dominant red dot AR in the loot pool. There's no Hollow Twister, there's no Striker Burst, there's no Red Eye AR, there's no MK Alpha, there's no MK7. We just have mostly third-person ARs, but there are a few weapons with sights, but they aren't as dominant as the other ones we've seen. And this makes managing bloom and using these third-person weapons a lot more relevant than it has been in most recent seasons. And I think there's also a lot of people who probably started playing the game over the past few years who just never really got the hang of this. And a major component to using these third-person weapons is going to be managing bloom and managing spread. And a lot of people know what bloom is and understand it, but it seems like based on how people play that they really don't understand it. So with these third-person weapons, the size of your crosshair is incredibly important. You have 4 dashes on your screen and then a dot in the center. And a lot of people think that dot in the center is where their shot is supposed to go. And that is true if you have first shot accuracy. But if you don't have first shot accuracy, the shot can actually go anywhere within those dashes. So if you were to make a circle connecting the outer edge of each of those dashes, your shot can basically go anywhere within there. And so with these third-person weapons, doing things like moving or shooting will increase the size of your crosshair, making your weapon less accurate. When you stand completely still and don't fire, you'll get first shot accuracy with a lot of the third-person weapons, where all of the dashes in your crosshair kind of meet in the center, and that's showing you that the shot will go exactly where the dot is. Also, crouching will decrease your max spread with most weapons. So if you were to full spray, there's a point at which your crosshair stops expanding and you've reached max spread. If you crouch, that max spread is going to be lower with most third-person weapons we've had throughout the years in Fortnite. And because with these weapons, like I said, the shot can go anywhere within your crosshair, that makes aiming a lot more random than like a red dot weapon, right? But the skill in aiming these third-person weapons is not only going to be tracking and stuff, but also just managing the size of your crosshair depending on the situation, the range of the fight, and like how large your opponent is or how much of them you're able to see. With most red dot guns, you can just shoot your weapon the same way all the time and not really think about the situation you're in. But with these third-person weapons, you need to adapt how you're playing and change how you're playing and change how you're aiming and change how you're shooting depending on the fight. Because if someone's using cover well, you're going to have less of that opponent to see, and so you're going to need your crosshair to be smaller to consistently hit shots. You're going to probably need to stand still, and you're probably going to need to tap fire, right? If they're up close to you, their character model is going to appear larger because of how things work, so you can probably full spray. At medium range, you might need to do a combination of tap firing or spraying, really depending on the weapon and how things are going. And one mistake I see a lot of players making is that they go for headshots, right? And what this means in their head is that they put the dot that's in the center of their crosshair on the opponent's head, and they try to keep that dot there the whole time, even while full spraying. And as I already said, the dot in your crosshair doesn't show anything unless you have first shot accuracy. It's just the center of your crosshair, right? So if you're full spraying medium range and you put the dot on like the opponent's forehead, the entire top half of your crosshair is just on air. It's not occupied by the opponent at all. And so you're just giving yourself max like 50% chance to even hit shots, but it's going to be lower than that anyways. So if you're like tap firing with first shot accuracy, then you could put the dot on the opponent's head, no problem. But the larger your crosshair is, the more you're going to want to move that dot down. If you're full spraying, you might want to put it like upper chest neck area. That way the top half of your crosshair still is maybe going to hit headshots, and the bottom half of your crosshair is going to be hitting like their torso. You want as much of the opponent, or as much of your crosshair taken up by the opponent as possible. That's what's going to give you the greatest chances to hit shots. One thing you can do at longer ranges, as I said, is going to be tap firing. And if you are going to be tap firing, you want to let first shot accuracy reset between shots. And this works really well with the Spire rifle because it has really high damage. And as I said, if you time your shots properly, you have first shot accuracy, you shoot, you wait until you have first shot accuracy again and you shoot, and you just keep doing that. And each weapon is a little different, but you develop a rhythm for how the rate at which you want to be shooting to be getting constant first shot accuracy. And this is something you need to do at longer ranges if you want to be consistent. And that kind of goes back to what I was saying, where you need to adapt, you know, how you're firing the weapon and how you're aiming it, depending on the range of the fight and how much of the opponent you're able to see, because that's going to increase your chances of hitting shots. Another thing you're probably going to need to do this season with these third-person weapons is going to be limiting the ranges that you're fighting at. I find myself taking way less long-range fights, and if there is a long-range fight, I want to be involved in it less, because it's harder to see what you're looking at these longer ranges with the third-person weapons, and I think it's just in general harder to aim with them. When we had something like the Hollow Twister AR in the game, you could pretty easily be consistent in fights that were over 100 meters away, and it wasn't too difficult. But now I don't really want to engage in that. I'm probably going to want to get closer to enemies before fighting, or just not even take part in a fight at all. If someone's like camping on the Demons POI that replaced Mass Meadows, if they're just camping up there wanting to fight really long range, I'm probably just not even going to partake in that and just deal with them later. I think I want to be in long range fights way less this season than in pretty much every other season. If you really hate dealing with Bloom, though, there are a few weapons in the loot pool, or there's a few options for you in the loot pool. The first is going to be the DMR. This has a sight on it, but it does have bullet drop and bullet travel time, and it's not the really greatest fire rate or hip fire, making it struggle in close and medium range. If you just want to use two guns, using something like the pump and the DMR is going to be a bit awkward. The precision SMG is also in the loot pool, and this is hit scan, and it also does have a red dot, but it has a pretty small magazine and not the greatest range in terms of like how much damage you're going to be doing at range. But if you want a red dot weapon that's, you know, great in medium range and close range, and can be like decent in long range if your aim is good, I think the precision SMG is a really good choice. And I think as time goes on, we may see more people kind of using this during the season. I remember in season 1 of chapter 6, even when the Hollow Twister AR was like at its peak, there was people that enjoyed using the precision SMG. I think the main thing holding it back is its mag size. In season 1, we did have the medallion from the Night Rose NPC that regened your ammo. But the precision SMG, I think, is pretty slept on this season. The kill switch revolvers is the dual wield revolvers, and they have basically constant first shot accuracy if you aim down sights with them while in air to kind of get that slow-mo effect. Again, these do have mag size concerns, but they reload fast. They're a really good weapon. A lot of people like them. And then the hyper burst pistol also is very accurate, and you can basically just full spray it, and it'll be decently accurate. It seems like the burst delay for this weapon is perfectly set up to take advantage of like constant first shot accuracy. As you're getting first shot accuracy back, it's ready to shoot again. Even the max spread of this weapon is not very large. So if you hate dealing with Bloom, but you know, you can still aim the third person guns, I think the hyper burst is a solid choice. Again, this has mag size concerns though. Overall, though, I think this lack of like a dominant red dot AR like we've had over the past few years opens up the meta to like several different options being more viable than they would be if we had the Hollow Twister AR or like the Striker Burst in the loot pool right now. I think if either of those guns got dropped into the game tomorrow, a lot of people would just be using them, and there wouldn't be as much, you know, discussion of like what is good. It would just be that clear option. And I obviously enjoy having the red dot ARs in the game, but I also enjoy this season making the red dot weapons not as dominant, so there's like a case for using some of the other weapons, and you know, it really comes down to your preference and your playstyle. Another thing you could potentially do to aim a little bit better with these weapons at longer ranges is going to be to lower your sensitivity a bit, or your aim down sight sensitivity a bit. Doesn't need to be massively different, but if you put it down a little bit, it might give you a little bit more control at longer ranges if you are struggling to just even, you know, get on the person in general at long range. I don't plan on changing my sensitivity, but I might, just kind of depending on how things go. And one final thing I want to leave you all with is just like, it takes time to be decent with these third person weapons. As I said, there's a lot that goes into it. It sounds simple and basic, but there's more thought, I think, that goes into these third-person weapons than the first-person weapons, and you need to be making kind of decisions on the fly, depending on how the fight is playing out, on how you're going to shoot your weapon and how you're going to aim, right? We're on day 4 of the season, I think, and so you probably aren't very used to it yet, and I personally feel like I'm not very used to it, and I've played a lot this season already. I definitely think in a week or two, I'll be much better at using these third-person weapons than I currently am. And a lot of people are going to be in that boat. And that's another thing to keep in mind, is that this is a problem for everyone. There's not a hollow twister AR in the game, and you're just, you know, getting unlucky and not finding it. Everyone's having to deal with this problem all at the same time. And the players that adapt to this well are going to be the ones that play well. And this is one of the things I've always kind of stressed with like my videos I make at the end of the season. I think the one I made last season, I told people to play Reload and get used to using different weapons in there. Reload is mostly third-person weapons, so had you done that, you probably would have been a bit more used to aiming with the third-person weapons. Obviously, Reload isn't, you know, as long range, but my point still stands. If you want to play this game like consistently long-term over the years, you're going to have to adapt to different metas. And this season is no different. But that is going to be it for this video. As always, if you guys did find this to be helpful, informative, or interesting, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you'd like to see more, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.